Console gaming in the mid to late 1980s may as well be defined as the age of side-scrolling action platformers. It seems like every other release in the 8-bit era fell under the genre, and you could even make the argument that the popularity of side-scrollers is the reason why the video game industry is as big and healthy as it is today, given that Nintendo's blockbuster platformer Super Mario Bros. Essentially revived a flatlining North American gaming market in 1985. Although they were mostly a product of the technical limitations of the time, 2D action platformers feel timeless thanks to their simple yet rewarding gameplay and iconic visual style. People young and old still love playing these games decades on, as evidenced by their wide availability on modern platforms, both officially and not so much. In recent years, a retro wave has splashed onto the scene, and game developers have been creating brand new games that take their inspiration directly from classic side-scrolling action platformers, most tailor-made for play on the latest hardware, though some are developed specifically to be experienced directly on older game consoles. These devs are more often than not small teams or independent studios, but even some of the big names will publish retro-style titles here and there that attempt to capture the magic of gaming's past. One of the more interesting examples of this comes from one of the pastime's heaviest hitters with an unusual title that not only pays homage to the legacy of platforming games from yesteryear, but also pokes fun of it at the same time. And that title? Sega's Chin-Dochu, ポールの大冒険. Released exclusively back in Japan in 2009 on Nintendo Wii's now defunct Wii Shop online service, Chin-Dochu, ポールの大冒険, or An Odd Journey, Pole's Big Adventure, was a download-only WiiWare game that sold for a paltry 500 yen, around $5 US, the same price point as a standard 8-bit Famicom title on the Wii Virtual Console. And with its blocky graphics and chiptune soundtrack, you would think it might be some long-lost title from the Famicom, at least at first glance. Starting up the game for the first time, the player must go through a tutorial stage that teaches the basics, which are as basic as they come. The protagonist Pole can move left and right with the D-pad, jump with one button, and shoot his gun with another, and that's it. The tutorial is short and straightforward, simply explaining the controls and some fundamental game mechanics, such as collecting gun power-ups, 1-ups, and apples that add to score. Here it's obvious that the game's biggest inspiration comes from the original Super Mario Bros. In both its looks and gameplay. However, I do see shades of Hudson's Challenger as well, with Pole's projectile attack and cowboy duds. Pole's Big Adventure consists of 6 levels: a dry desert, a lush but perilous Brazilian jungle, a sunny Caribbean beach, the frigid Antarctic snow, a modern Japanese town, and the low-grav frontiers of outer space. Typically, each level is broken up into 3 substages, with the player taking shelter in a small castle at the end of the first 2, all of that popular Nintendo game I've already mentioned twice before, and the last substage ends the level with a boss fight. Pole is on a quest to save his girlfriend Sharon, who has been kidnapped by vile poachers as presented in the opening cinematic, which features some rather realistic portraits of the hero and villains, a stark contrast to the game's graphics and cover art. The limited color palette led me at first to think this underling character was some kind of monster like the Keiko demon from Doom, but he's just a buff guy wearing an animal skin over his shoulders. Up until now, everything about Pole and his big adventure probably looks and sounds like a rather uninspired 8-bit action title derivative of bigger name platformers, but it's really something unique. Bizarre even. You'll realize this just a few steps and hops into the game's first stage.
Kata? なんやこれ? 何混じってんねん? 顔面痛いって.
What? Soon you'll learn that just about every road on this journey subverts conventional expectations. Each level contains fourth wall breaking gags called neta that the player discovers throughout the quest. Some accidentally, some incidentally, and some intentionally as you move along. Many of these gags joke about frustrating experiences related to old games, due to technical issues or poor game design, and others parody other games or popular culture. But many more are just flat out random or odd, really putting the chin in Chin-Dochu, similar to the typical humor you might find on Japanese television or at a Japanese comedy theater. And that's all by design, since the 8-bit presentation of Chin-Dochu ポールの大冒険 is all just the shell that houses a comedy game, particularly in the style of one of Japan's most popular forms of comedy, manzai. As I was researching manzai for this video, I spoke with a friend of mine and was pleasantly surprised that he's apparently an expert in the topic. He even humbly offered to share his valuable insight into the world of Japanese comedy with us, so I knew I couldn't possibly turn down such a rare opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my absolute pleasure to bring on the esteemed retro gaming enthusiast and my good friend, Stika of Stika's Retro Corner.
Hi there everyone, my name is Stik and many of you may not know this, but in my youth I actually majored in Japanese communications, culture and language. For example, did you know katana means Japanese sword?
Yes, I believe I did. And did you just quote Samurai Cop?
What? No, I'm highly fluent in Japanese. For example, Honda means Japanese Ford.
Yeah, well, anyway, about manzai then.
Oh yes, I know all about banzai!
Manzai.
Right, that. In fact, I'll now perform a typical manzai routine. What is the deal with airline food? It's trying to hijack our stomachs and take us to the bathroom.
I think that's more Jerry Seinfeld than something from Japanese culture.
Well, I can see a clear influence in manzai and traditional Japanese culture and values in this game as well. For example, your high jumps are actually a reference to how gravity and physics work differently in Japan. For those who don't know, in Japan, if you fall down some stairs, you will always land face first on some girl's big anime titties, with a 50% added chance that she's actually your long-lost childhood friend that you've forgotten about. That's just physics.
Okay, I don't really see how this is going.
You've also got this power-up that turns you into Chuck Norris. This is actually a reference to Nobunaga-sensei, who was a big Texas Ranger fan back in the Edo period, which is actually how he got most of his strategies to defeat his enemies in battle.
You mean the Sengoku era and the Imagawa clan?
No, I mean his big-titted anime harem. Man's gotta have priorities, dude.
What? Okay, I think I see what's going on here. Stika, come clean with me. You're not a Japanese expert, never majored in anything Japanese. You're just some run-of-the-mill weeb from Portugal who watches too much anime, aren't you?
What? No, I did all the required reading and spent years studying their classic literature.
Oh yeah? What did you study?
Well, Big Titty Donate-chan number 3, Mother Knows Breast number 8,
That's a good one.
I Can't Believe My Younger Sister Has Huge Knockers number 12, and Amazing Spider-Man number 3.
Oh, get out of here. Spider-Man?
What? It's the one where he fights Doc Ock, and I grip my cock.
Alright, that's enough. Goodbye, Stika. You got a lot of growing up to do, I'll tell you that. Ridiculous. I'm sorry about that. If you want to get anything done, you gotta do it yourself, I guess. Anyway, what manzai really is a traditional two-man comedy act that has its roots that go back hundreds of years. But it was the popular Osaka style that really brought it to the mainstream. One performer plays a bit of a goof who says or does silly things, and the other is more of a straight man who corrects or berates his partner's foolishness. These are called the boke and tsukomi, respectively. In this game, Paul plays the role of the tsukomi, and for the boke, well, the game itself plays that role with all the absurdities it throws at the player. It's a pretty clever setup, and the gags in Paul's adventure were conceived by actual Japanese comedians. Paul's reactions are plastered across the screen in large text similar to what you'd see on Japanese TV, but what gives his words an even bigger impact is his delivery in the Kansai dialect used in Osaka, voiced by Mr. Takashi Endo, who was part of a manzai act back in the 90s called Homare.
また UFO キャッチャーかい。UFO の中で何されてん。
There are 100 total neta in the game, evaluated as either bronze, silver, or gold, depending on how tricky it is to discover them, and these rankings come with a score bonus, not that score matters. A lot of them trigger or are triggered by player deaths, so extra lives are given out generously and the game is quite easy. Bosses are a pushover, and you can spam Pole's attack and take out most before they even start to put up a fight. That might sound disappointing for fans of the genuine challenge that older 8-bit platformers were known to provide, so thankfully there is a classic second round after the credits that ramps up the difficulty exponentially, especially with the boss fights. Take a look at the Stage 5 boss, an ordinary Shiba Inu, as he appears in round 1, versus his much overpowered round 2 form.
日本のボスしょぼ血が消えて。
The humor in Pole's Big Adventure is the main driving point for players to complete it, and there's not much of a reason to play the game other than encountering all the different gags. A counter at the bottom of the screen shows the total number of neta collected across all playthroughs, and any of these can be seen again at any time by accessing them in a gallery mode on the main menu. To help make collecting all the neta less of a hassle, stage select options become available as the player progresses through the game. I've tried to keep from spoiling too many of these so far, but to make this video feel more complete, I think I need to at least explicitly share some of my favorites. What better way than with a top 10 countdown? There are plenty of better ways, but here we go! Number 10. A running gag throughout the game. At the castle bases in between each stage, Pole will be reunited with his love, but of course his princess is in another castle, and the imposter Sharon is revealed to be the poacher underling. Over the course of the game, however, these disguises just keep getting worse and worse. Most of them are quite humorous, though a couple are plain disturbing. These aren't part of the 100 official neta, but provide some welcome chuckles nonetheless. Number 9. Level 5-2 is just a long stretch of empty space for about a minute and a half, and at the end a crowd is gathered as if it were the finish line of a marathon. This game loves wasting your time, and this is nothing. You'll see in a bit. Number 8. Technically 3 in 1 here, but they're related. You'll encounter the polar bear boss of level 4 a couple of times before the actual showdown. The first time you see him is near the beginning of 4-2, and he'll take off quickly since you met up with him a bit too early. The second time is at the end of 4-2, where he's become frozen in ice waiting too long for Pole to reach him. When you finally fight him in 4-3, things climax in a nasty bloodbath of a battle. Number 7. A gag that plays around with the idea of the mushroom power-up. Picking this one up in the second stage turns Pole into a big buff shirtless cowboy man, similar to something you'd see in a Fist of the North Star game. The change is only cosmetic, however, and actually comes with a major disadvantage, as now all of Pole's shots go directly over the heads of his enemies due to the increase in height.
See, I told you, Chuck Norris fan.
I thought I told you to get out of here. Completely ridiculous. Can you believe this character? Number 6. In 5-3, there's a section with a rather steep fall. No worries, it's a video game, the laws of physics don't apply, just jump down, break a leg. Literally. Afterward, poor crippled Pole has to limp around in excruciating pain for the remainder of the area. Number 5. An odd fleshy apple can be found in 6-2. Eating it at first seems to have no effect, but just a little while later, Pole collapses, and then an alien violently bursts from his chest. Sick! It's kind of dumb, but I'm a huge fan of the Alien movies. Number 4. This one is a straight up troll on Sega's part. In stage 1-2, cacti occupy much of the background. It's harmless to touch these, of course, since they're all just basically wallpaper, with the exception of one, however. Gruesome and cheap. This happens again on the beach with a palm tree, for some reason. Number 3. Another troll job, and a truly cruel one. Right at the very end of the last stage, right before the final boss fight, there are some large pipes laid out near the exit. Your gamer instincts say to try heading down into them, and if you do head into the middle one, you're transported all the way back to stage 1-2, with no way to return to the last stage except the way you just did, which is to go through the entire game again, or reset and use stage select. They really got me with this one. I think my jaw dropped onto the floor. Number 2. Here's a bit of nostalgia for anyone who's played real 8-bit carts on original hardware. At the end of stage 5-1, the graphics glitch out, and all sprites, including the player character, become garbled, mostly unidentifiable messes. Ah, memories. Number 1. Arguably what this game is most famous for, another mushroom gag. Emphasis on the mushroom. Picking up the shroom at the start of stage 5-1 will power up Pole's, well, Pole. There must have been Viagra in that thing as well, because while not a perma-boner, this erection does last for the entirety of the stage. It really puts the chin in Chin Dochu. That's a callback. And that's my top 10. And I guess that's Pole's big adventure. The first playthrough should take about a half an hour or so to complete. Round 2, a little more than that depending on how well you can nail the enemy boss patterns. There's no real reward for finishing the second round or collecting all of the neta. Just some color changes on the title screen and the pleasure of rewatching all gags at your leisure. As far as options, there are a few, including channeling Pole's voice through the Wii remote or turning it off completely, as well as disabling the large text that pops up on screen when encountering one of the gags. Probably not really stuff you want to mess with though, since the voice and text are a big part of the game's charm. Pole never got a second outing, though his big adventure was actually the first in an intended series of games using the Chin moniker. The second and sadly final entry in the Chin series was Chin Sports on the Wii, published just a few months later in 2009. A bizarre take on the popular motion sports genre that flooded the console, this title was supervised in part by Kenichi Nishi, formerly of Lovedelic and Skip fame, a man known for his unconventional takes on game design. Unlike Pole, Chin Sports did get its chance in the spotlight in North America and Europe under the name Wacky World of Sports. It's good, you should pick it up. While the only things that really linked the two are their quirky presentation and odd content, a more material connection between the games is a special soundtrack for both that was offered as a bonus item for early adopters of Chin sports. While its gameplay is simple and limited and lacks much replay value, Chindouchu Poru no Daiboken is an interesting game that fans of the golden age of console gaming, or those who enjoy Japanese comedy, should play at least once, and maybe a few more times to see the reactions of friends and family if you got them. As of the making of this video, it was only ever made available on the Wii Shop, and while it's not the most likely candidate for a re-release, stranger things have happened in gaming. I would love to see Pole not only get ported to other systems, but for a full-fledged remake or sequel done in the same spirit, with 10 times the amount of gags and levels, an adventure taking place over multiple console gaming generations, and one with an international release. But before I get excited over things that will probably never be, I'll just end the video here and calm myself down. Big thanks goes to Stika for his help in making this video a little less conventional, much like Pole's big adventure, and also for showing us the dangers of hentai. If you like old video games or new old games like this one, then you must check out his videos because while he's not an expert in Japanese language or culture, the man definitely knows his retro style games. Plus, he has the best accent in the game.
I will fucking kill you, Jimmy.
Also, thank you for watching this episode of Import Gaming for the Win. This is Jimmy Hapa. Take care.